Oh, hello. Welcome to the 2013 Hundie Challenge. Today we're going to be discussing Hearts in Atlantis by Lorne Greene. You know, I've come across a lot of chaff during this challenge. I know it's not really necessarily chaff. Tastes differ, and, sometimes you just don't get a book, or, whatever. I'm glad, though, that it seems like for every book that I don't like or I don't get, I come across a book like this that's actually really good. One of the great things, I think I've mentioned this before, is, seeing how universal different time periods are, how there's great literature from every time and around the world. Admittedly, this list is really concentrated on England and a little bit of America. But even so, it's really cool to read things from the 30s or the 40s, or even like the turn of the 20th century that, is great. And, whether they have modern sensibilities or not, they're still, distinctly human and facing the same challenges and everything that we face. I think that's really cool. I think that's one of the great things about literature. I'm not trying to talk around this book. I know I haven't said a word about it. I'm a minute into the review already. The heart of the matter takes place during World War II in an unnamed African colony of Great Britain. I think it's supposed to be a fictional one, or if it's, one of those like nod and a wink, like, it's really whatever, Tanzania, or I don't know. I don't know what it's. I know it's not Nigeria, it's not South Africa. There were a couple places that they mentioned in the book, so it's clearly not those. But whether, like I said, it's completely fictional, like Costaguana and Nostromo, or whether it's like something that I ought to know if I knew that time in that place, like with a nod and a wink, I'm not sure. But it deals with a very, very interesting story, and one I don't know that we see too often, but it's about a man's fall from grace, if you will. He, from the start of the book, he's like the perfect, incorruptible, that he can't be bribed. He's a local colonial official. Nobody can bribe him, get the better of him. He does his job. He's a great religious guy. He's a dedicated Catholic. That's interesting. I think that's maybe 2 books in a row I read about the plight of the English Catholic, which is, I guess it's unusual and difficult to be a Catholic in England, certainly in this time frame, the 30s and the 40s. So this guy Scobie, who is incorruptible. I don't know why I keep thinking of Nostromo, or I haven't read it in years, but that keeps jumping to my mind. He starts out the book that way, and by the last page, he's become utterly corrupted in romance, in his personal life, in his private life, in his professional life. He even takes his own life, which is well and truly established. Even if you don't know that as part of, Catholic dogma, it's really thoroughly established in the book that suicide is the only, unforgivable sin. So it's really interesting to see how he takes such a severe, character arc, and it's all because of his dedication to his wife and his, perfection, if you will, at the start. He feels obliged to take care of her, and thus he gets in debt with the wrong sort of people, which is this Syrian guy in the colony, Yusuf. And Yusuf is like the local gangster that for some reason Scobie, as the police major, I think he's not really the police chief, he's maybe like number 2 or 3. He gets involved with this gangster purely to take care of his wife. But then, of course, once you're involved with a gangster, it's not too long before he starts playing you, you start playing him, and just the way that Scobie falls from grace, without ever... It's interesting, his internal life really never changes, the way he thinks about himself, and how he justifies everything. And it's interesting because at the end of the book, he still thinks of himself as the same way as in the beginning. He recognizes his utter corruption, which is interesting as opposed to a lot of people, like the Michael Corleones of the world, that I think that's a much more familiar character arc for us, is how you keep justifying little transgressions to yourself until you become absolutely corrupted. Scobie is almost, because of his strength of heart, I'm not really explaining this very well, but it's almost because of his strength of character and heart in the beginning that it's impossible for him to not be absolutely corrupted by the end. It was a very interesting book, and surprisingly, compared to a lot of the American books and the other things that I've read, not quite as racist as I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought getting into this book about a African colony that it was going to be like unreadably racist, but that was more just like a subtext, I guess, in the book. Certainly Scobie wasn't racist and didn't think of himself as racist, and ultimately his manservant, they call them boys. I just said it wasn't a racist book, but there you are right there. His boy, Ali, is ultimately murdered by Yusuf, the Syrian gangster, because he knows about Scobie's corruption and his connections with Yusuf, and Scobie kind of tacitly acknowledges it. So Scobie goes through the whole range of crime and sin, even though he starts out as a policeman, an upholder of the law, and a religious man, an upholder, in a way, of the church. By the end, he's complicit in murder, adultery, suicide, robbery, bribery, like everything that he stood up for in the beginning. It's a brutal book. I may have also been underplaying some of the religious undertones in this. His internal life as a Catholic is very deep, very strong, and he's constantly recognizing himself as committing sin. It's a great book. It's a great read. It's a fast read. A lot of deep themes, without maybe hitting you over the head with it. I definitely recommend it. I've heard of Graham Greene. I've heard he's great. This really put me off on the right foot with him. Definitely recommend it. Thanks for tuning in. Next time we will be talking about The Sheltering Sky by Paul Bowles, also taking place in colonial Africa, and also not planned by me, just kind of a random occurrence. Thanks for tuning in.